You want to put on the first picture? I want you to meet my girl. That's Kathy Boyce. This was the summer my parents left my sister and I with our grandparents on their farm in South Dakota. My grandmother, who I adored, was in charge of all my activities that summer, and she bought me my first paint-by-number kit, comprised of 2 small canvases, each featuring a little ballerina, paint, and brushes. I'd begged my parents for ballet lessons the year before. What I got instead was an ugly pair of brown corrective shoes. Do you guys remember those? To keep me from tripping over my right foot. Well, I painted my ballerinas carefully, following the instruction and placing the right color in each designated area. And slowly, I began to see the dancers emerge from their background. I learned how the placement of light and shadow gave the figures dimension. I learned what colors defined the foreground and what colors slipped easily into the back. When they were finished, I asked for more paint, blank canvases. And by the end of the summer, the little farmhouse was littered with my ballerinas in bright colors in various poses. When they were finished, I asked, the next year I had a particularly hard year. My parents moved about every 2 years, and I got to be the new kid in class a lot. And that's especially hard when you have ugly brown shoes, and you're chubby, and you have buck teeth, which I did. Unfortunately, I was not ignored, but harassed and bullied. In fact, it got so bad that my teacher kept me in the classroom during recess for my own safety. My teacher asked my mother one day, "Does Kathy have a talent or interest I could highlight in class so the other kids get to know her a little better?" My mother told her about my little ballerinas. So the next day, I brought all my art supplies and began to paint at recess. A couple weeks later, I arrived at my class to discover all my paintings set up around the room. What a great teacher I had, right? The teacher announced, "Class, we have a real artist among us." All eyes turned to me, and the questions flooded. How did I learn to paint like that? Would I teach them? I quickly became more than popular or smart or even pretty. I was an artist. It sometimes seems I blinked, and in the next moment, the same girl painted the ballerinas was the art director of a national magazine. And one summer, as I stood in a ballroom in Chicago receiving an award for excellence in magazine cover design, the memories of that summer in South Dakota came flooding back to me. I've come to believe that God uses everything in our life to paint His glory. He restores our old, cracked, damaged canvases and paints something new that you and I would have never, ever considered possible. I met Jesus at 16, one fall evening on Bainbridge Island, Washington. My youth group pastor asked me to share about my personal relationship with Jesus. Now, you guys know I'm not usually at a loss for words, but I found I had nothing to share. You see, I didn't know Him. So the rest of my painting reveals myriads of passionate reds and glorious oranges, like being baptized in Lake Washington, for the first time understanding that Jesus was real and would never, ever leave me. There are those leafy greens on my canvas that speak of growth and stretching, like conquering my fear of public speaking. You guys probably don't realize this, but I had a terrible fear of public speaking. Or making the choice to be a mother of teenagers at 41 and subsequently writing a book about what I didn't know about mothering. There would be highlights that would tell you about my time spent in prison singing and speaking, or fixing meals for the homeless down on the streets of Portland with my family. There would be colors that represent finding love at 41, and marrying a man who proposed to me in a shopping mall with a bagpipe player and 100 strangers waiting to hear my answer. There would be shadows where I met challenges that were scary, like sailing with my dad through the worst storm in the history of Chesapeake Bay, or scary and stupid, like kayaking backwards down a Class 4 rapid. There are palettes of yellow that would tell you of fly fishing the St. Joe in Idaho with my husband, becoming a life coach for women, and humorous moments like having my hair cut in Siena, Italy by a man who could speak no English. And as this figure emerges, you can see that my canvas is full of layers and depth that comes from 63 years and a whole lot of paint. And Jesus is still painting new layers. Those of you who know me well know that I never attended Bible study for years because I worked for a Christian women's organization, and I spent way too many days in meetings with nothing but women. But Kathy Dickinson convinced me to come to her Bible study. You know, I really thought it was just going to be the one time. But you know Kathy. And who would have thought that I would not only be going after all these years, but facilitating? Jesus just painted it in there. He is both the hand that paints the sky and the artist of my life. And one day, we will all see the finished work, painted with all our joys and successes, our shadows and heartaches. And when you see it, everything will be made clear.